everyone, and welcome to Super Respectable. My name is Toshir Rahman. I am reporting from an undisclosed location. It's my living room. And with me, as always, is my friend David Lewis. Dave, how are you?
I'm good. I'm in a location that I can disclose as The Hague.
That's The Hague in the Netherlands. And last time we spoke, you were just about to start Lockdown Part 2, the remix,
the sequel. I don't think
Sequels are
it's
never
going to
good
be
as good. Yeah.
never as good. There's a few that are pretty good. This one isn't.
Yeah. What's the situation? What's the 411, as the kids
Well,
say?
the 411 is it's not like as severe as the initial one, but there's a likelihood that it will be in the coming weeks. Because we're in like a semi-lockdown in the Netherlands right now, with restaurants, bars, cafes, all the things that make life fun gone.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. It's so depressing where we are as humanity, as the world. Like just the other day, I was on the news reading something, and the people were saying like it's been 7 months and 8 months, and that number is just like it's hard to even process that pretty much the entire year has been this way. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, it's. I think we talked about it before. How kind of the depressing part is the not knowing when it ends. It just continues forever and ever. So that's tough. I think that's really starting to drag on people now. So you just got to dig deep and find whatever reserves you have inside you, and just keep doing your thing.
Just keep going. It's the same around the world. I don't think I've heard any positive news out of anywhere. Just the other day, I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, Trump got COVID like 2 weeks ago, but he's still out and running. What did they give him? Maybe they should just give the rest of the world.
I want what he's got. I know it was very experimental, so maybe there's still some side effects that remain to be seen. But he was dancing last night, so that's quite something.
We don't talk politics too much on this. Well, we did 2 episodes ago. We shouldn't, but we are we are 2 weeks plus minus a couple of days from an election. It's a big election. I don't know if you watched the debate or the town halls, the separated town halls.
I saw some of the highlights.
It's weird, man.
Or lowlights as they were. I gotta say, it's just very underwhelming on both sides. Obviously, it's much better to have one than the other.
Yeah.
Without going into too much detail, but it's just I'd rather switch off at this point and just hide under a pile of coats and wait for everything to be clear again to come out.
There's just a quick plug. There's an amazing podcast called Pod Save Us, or I forget. Sorry, the names. I'll link it. It's from the guys who were the media team for Barack Obama. His like speech writer and blah 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 blah. Pod Save America. I'm sorry, Pod Save America. And
John Favreau, I think his name is.
Yeah, not the director, not the famous actor, but
maybe I'm mistaken.
No, you're right. It's John Favreau. His same name but different dude. And so they do really good analysis of politics, very in depth. And so check it out if you're interested. If you're an American listener interested in American politics, they do a good. Barack Obama was on it the other day, and he spoke about the upcoming elections and politics. And it's interesting. Usually people are pretty people of past political positioning are pretty neutral publicly when it comes to getting into the issues before an election. I mean, they do support a side, but they'll still be fair to the other side. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of people on both sides of the aisle are really just coming out blatantly with their point of view and who they're voting for. It's just enough is enough is sort of the mentality. So it's a unique election campaign.
Yeah, and it's always amazing to me how much the rest of the world just watches and puts on some popcorn and just sits back and watches the American elections. It's very captivating every single time it happens. Anyway. Hey, we're at episode 10. Just to change it up a bit, that's crazy. 10 episodes. We started this, it feels like yesterday, but it's just humming along.
It is.
How do you feel?
10 episodes in, I think we're getting into a better rhythm. of
Okay.
things. Topics are good. We're getting good feedback. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers as well. A special thanks to Mr. Kanatro Ide. That intro,
Kentaro.
oh, Kentaro, I apologize. Kentaro-san, gomen nasai. That's sorry in Japanese. So I don't speak Japanese, by the way.
How is your Japanese? Because you have some connection.
Yes, it's horrible. That's pretty much it. What I just said, the two words.
Okay.
I could also say good morning and good afternoon if you need it, and thank you very much. But that's yeah, that's pretty much it. But that intro was his. It's amazing. We've been linking his site on, so if you guys want to check it out, or you need someone to do some music for whatever you need, he's been awesome. So thank you to him. So yeah, I mean, I like all our supporters have been great, and so I'm having fun. How about you? Are you enjoying?
Yeah, totally. I'm just amazed at how quickly we got up and running from the moment we decided let's make a podcast to 10 episodes. It's flown by, but it's still been a lot of fun, having people like Kentaro put together the music, having the graphic design back and forth for our social media profiles, and just having some friends and family and fans listen to our show. So it's cool to put something out there.
Yeah, we've been getting good comments. Our last episode, again, thank you to Sid for being on, has been doing really great. People have good comments about it. How many people are in India, Dave? What's the population? 1.38?
I think it's like 1.6.
Is it? Oh, it's okay. It's increased. So according to this morning's statistics, 1.5 billion people listen to our podcast. So
oh, really?
Yeah. So thank you.
That's very impressive.
To the country of India. No, thanks to him. That was a really great episode. We're getting good feedback generally. I learned so much. We kind of touched on a bunch of issues, but it gelled together really well. So thank you again to Siddhar Singh. So so it's my week to present, and I was actually kind of confused on which topic to choose. But I kept thinking about this population issue in India, and how big that is, like just now 1.6 million. And then I started kind of thinking about what these people do for entertainment purposes, and then Bollywood kind of came into mind. This is me just walking and thinking. And then I started thinking about this idea of like celebrity in India, like with that many people, like what's celebrity like who do they follow, and blah, blah, blah. So I Googled a little bit, and a gentleman came up who I did some research on, and I found it to be extremely interesting. So I know we go to different places around the world, but I'm going to stick in India a little bit, if you don't mind, because something really interesting is happening with one specific person. And I think he sort of represents other entertainers in that area. And so I started looking into him, and it was really, really interesting. So I'm talking about a gentleman. His name is Shahrukh Khan. Do you know Shahrukh
What's the first name?
Shahrukh.
Shahrukh?
Shahrukh Khan. So he goes by many names. SRK is a name. The Bad Shah of Bollywood is another name. The King of Bollywood, King Khan. I like that one.
I like King Khan. That's cool.
King Khan. So Shahrukh Khan is. While I speak, Dave, you can Google, if you want. But he's one of the most famous Bollywood stars in India. But India is not the only place he's known. He has a presence globally around the world, especially in the Arab world, in Asia, and the subcontinent. But the thing that's most interesting about it is he has over 3.5 billion followers, or fans, if you're going to call it, around the world, which is crazy. Billion. So this is what really kind of surprised me about it. Is I don't mean like that's Twitter followers, even though he's got like 34 million Twitter followers, but 33.5 billion followers, generally fans are from around the world who know who he is and kind of follow it. So when I heard this, I was like astonished and shocked, because I couldn't even think of anyone in Hollywood that would have this kind of following. So I kind of looked at his life and some of the things he's done, and I wanted to talk about it, and then also look at Bollywood sort of fame. So if you've got questions or comments, I got some.
I have lots of questions because I know very little.
It's amazing, because I'm sure if you talk to any of your friends from the Arab world or from Asia or India, it's a household name. And then I started thinking, like, if I asked you, Dave, who's the most famous Hollywood person you would know, like what name would you come up with?
For Hollywood?
Hollywood.
Brad Pitt, George Clooney.
Totally.
Um,
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. I'm thinking of
Yeah.
all the dudes, but
So
yeah,
like I thought about that too, and then I started thinking about like, okay, Hollywood's impressive, but like how far does Hollywood really go? And then like I looked at some of the numbers and kind of the statistics, and Hollywood sort of stops at kind of Europe. I realized it does go into Africa and other places around the world, but most people can't name a lot of the actors, and that's been my experience too. Like when you get to like Bangladesh or China, they'd be like, oh yeah, that guy, you know what I mean? But like
really,
yeah, but I've been to places where pictures of Shah Rukh Khan are like on the wall, you know, and like and I've been to places where if you say his name, people know who he is, and I'll explain how this has happened, and it's really fascinating. It's kind of a gem of a story, so I thought it'd be really unique. So SRK, we'll go King Khan. That's the nickname we both like. King Khan. So he started off as an actor. He's moved into production, and he's also a TV personality. But in the 25 years he's been in the Indian Bollywood industry, he's produced over. Sorry, he starred in over 80 films, which is a crazy number if you think about it. I
wow.
actually looked into Hollywood, and Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Tom Cruise are nowhere near that number, and they've had careers as long as this gentleman. The only actor I found who was able to get close or a little bit more was Samuel L. Jackson. There's a time he was just pumping out movies like left, right, and center, you know. But in supporting roles or in supplementary roles. But I'm talking about 80 films where this gentleman has been the main protagonist or antagonist. He's won 14 Filmfare Awards. A Filmfare Award is like an Indian Oscar.
Hmm.
So for a long time, he was winning, being nominated and winning them. And he's been given like the highest honors by the Indian government and the French government as well for his contribution to film. So we can definitely consider him to be a global star. So it's really interesting. But you've never heard of this person before, right?
Uh, I have heard of
Okay.
him. I've seen his face. I recognize him
Mm.
only because of his photograph alongside our prime minister when he paid a visit to India.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
But we
So
can get into that later.
okay, no problem. So, but that's an interesting point you brought up, is I think a lot of people also might not know his name, but know his face, and I think
The
that's
face.
the face, and it's really intentional. By the way, that's a really interesting thing I've learned, and I'll get to it. Is that he kind of wants to infiltrate into all medias in all forms, and so people like I'll talk about some of the things he does in India, but also abroad. It's really clever because if it's fame that you're looking for, or celebrity, the Indian way of doing it is different than the North American way of doing it too. And I'll give some examples. But just as a background, so Shah Rukh Khan was born in New Delhi in about 54 years ago in the 60s. But interestingly enough, when he was born, he was actually raised by his grandparents for the first 5 years. His parents weren't dead or deceased or anything like that. But what happened was his grandparents had all girls growing up, and they didn't have any boys. So when their daughter had Shah Rukh Khan, who was a boy, they really wanted a boy in their life. So they kind of, according to his own words, they kind of made an arrangement with their daughter if they could raise their grandson for a while, you know, just to have him in the family. And if you remember what Sid talked about last week, is that the whole in India, family is a really important part of culture and tradition. So this was something that wasn't common but understood. So Shah Rukh Khan even says himself that like for the first 5 years, he was raised by his grandparents, and then his mom kind of like missed him and wanted him back. So she was like,
Aw,
"Can I get him back?" And so they're like, "Sure, sure." So he grew up in a middle class family. He was a good student, a good athlete. He wanted to be a sportsman, but due to a shoulder injury, he kind of knew that career was up. So he started shifting away from sports into theater and acting, and he fell in love with it, and he kind of did it on the side. So he went to college. He finished his BA in economics, which was very respectable, you know.
wow.
Yeah. He did his master's
That's
in
unusual for,
very
yeah,
unusual for an Indian or for an actor or both.
for an actor, for someone aspiring to a Hollywood slash Bollywood career,
I'm just messing with
as
you.
far as I'm aware.
It's even yeah, like it's very very amazing, and it's very kind of like logical as well, I guess, in the Indian context, where it's like you wouldn't go study acting traditionally. So I think he kind of felt like economics was more of a safe bet, and maybe do acting on the side. So he actually went on and did his master's in mass communications as well, which is
Hmm.
very respectable too. Because I can't think of a lot of actors who even went to college. Nonetheless, somebody who went to grad school, you know. So while he was doing both, he kind of moved towards acting. And something sad happened was that his father died at a really young age. So he lost his dad. And so in the 80s, the Indian television scene was kind of up and coming. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of programming and it was mostly documentaries and like one state owned TV channel, you know, sort of like their version of the CBC, I guess, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And so he kind of got into TV early, and he was doing all these pilots and these series. And this is the sad thing, is that he finished a series and then his mom got sick. So the series never went on live at that point. So what he did was he got a tape of it and he brought it to his mom at the hospital. And while he's spending time with her, he showed her the series. And a day later, she passed on. So so he lost his dad, then he lost his mom. So both his parents never really actually got to see his stardom. You know what I mean? So it's kind of sad. And he talks about it, how like he says that because they didn't want to see, they didn't get to see his stardom. He wanted to be as big of a star as possible so they could see him from like the skies or the heaven, right? Very poetic.
Wow, that's very poetic.
Yeah, it's very poetic. So what happened though is, interestingly, so he's a TV star in the 80s, late 80s as well. And in the 90s, the Indian Bollywood scene is horrible. It's falling drastically. Nothing new is being produced. It's really old content. There's new audiences want something different. Ticket sales are following. It's not popular at all. So him with a cohort of a lot of young actors kind of get into Indian cinema, and they really start to make it popular. It's kind of like a rat pack of guys and girls. And so it's because they say he's one of the reasons that people started coming back to the cinema. So he started playing villains at first, and then he became the romantic lead. Then he went into comedy. He's sort of like a gentleman of all trades, you know, in terms of acting. So this is where one of the points comes up, is that people say the reason he's so likable, or his films are so likable, is that many of his films talk about some really important themes in Indian culture: national identity, connection to the diaspora if you're abroad, gender, race, social and religious differences. So he kind of, if you ever watch an Indian movie, you can definitely see a lot of things that differ from our westernized movies, is that they really try to build it around issues of commonality in Indian culture, things that people can relate to. So he's been doing this for 30 years, you know, and he's produced 80 films. And so that was my first thing I wanted to ask you, was that like, if you, we both watch movies. I know it's Hollywood. I don't know if you watch movies from around the world as well, but have you ever noticed like Hollywood movies seem to be somewhat different from other parts of the world, like just in terms of content and structure?
For sure. I mean, there's definitely an American style, and it's noticeable. I've lately gone out of my way to watch, you know, Italian movies, French movies, just to give my language skills a bit of a kick.
Yeah.
And it's much more dialogue based, and it's almost as if you're watching a play for a French film. There's so many French movies where honestly it just takes place at a dinner table.
Yeah.
And it all goes from there. There's no car chases. There's no one getting hacked to death or shot.
Yeah.
Whereas an American movie, it'd be hard done by if you didn't get a car chase or something blowing up, that sort of thing. Even
in a documentary or something, something blowing up or a car chase. Yeah, it's interesting. I want to be more. I have this tendency just to watch Hollywood movies, which I know isn't great. I want to open my horizons. I've been watching movies from around the world, and like, I think in Hollywood, you know, they've been doing it for so long, so they have the resources and kind of the structure, but content sometimes is lacking. Whereas if you watch maybe a movie from around the world, it's sort of the opposite. Resources are lacking, but they have good stories. They just need that time to kind of develop. Have you ever seen a Bollywood movie?
I think at your house.
Mine? That's racist. Just because I'm brown.
Why is it racist?
No, it's probably true. You probably did. My mom probably had one in the back. I think
Why would that be racist?
No, I'm just being. silly with you. I actually
Um,
don't. I
so I think I either watched it at your house or our friend Andrew Moonsami's house.
Andrew. Yeah,
And I have to say, like, I couldn't last more than a half an hour
it's
because it got too much into. It was like a musical, right?
yeah.
And I don't like musicals.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so like I don't watch Bollywood movies generally speaking. I find the stories to be a little too traditional, and I get upset. I tell my wife like because I'm like this is so silly, and from the traditionality of it, because a lot of the problems are really like things that are very common in Indian, Bangladeshi, Pakistani culture, and I get upset. Also, they're extremely long. I find like my attention span's about the perfect movie length for me is 2 hours. If it's more than 2 hours, I start to really kind of lose focus. But I remember watching a movie with my wife. It was like 4.5 hours long, and we had to like take breaks and stuff. It was so long. And that's not the traditional time. It's usually about 3 hours, 3 hours 30 minutes. It's
well,
just
that's
man,
too long.
it's too long. And then the music also. But here's this interesting thing. So I watched a documentary about 10, 15 years back on Bollywood, and they talked about the reason they add music into Bollywood movies is due to audiences and the culture, right? It's a culture rich in music and in dance, and so audiences like that kind of thing. And at the same time, they make them long because this is the night out for the audience, right? A movie might not be that might be a little expensive. They might not be able to afford it all the time. So when they want to go, they really want to put as much in as possible. So they're not making movies for you and I. They're making movies, Bollywood, for Bollywood attendees, Bollywood fanatics, people who understand. So like apparently, if you go to a cinema in India, people like yell back at the cinema. People really get involved in it. They're there. It's like a whole entertainment thing, which is different than our part of the world where we just kind of sit, we watch Tom Cruise jump
Have
from.
you done that? Have you watched a Bollywood movie in Dhaka or India?
No. I would if you're up for it. When we go to India, we can both go and do it. I'd love to experience it, but I haven't personally. But
And I have another question. Is is it like a standard template in a Bollywood movie to have singing and dancing? Like
yeah,
it's not a Bollywood movie without that?
yeah. So I think there are some movies coming out nowadays. I'll talk about one with King Khan, which didn't have singing or dancing in it, but traditionally it does. And so I've actually traditionally there is music in it. There's a number of songs and dancing in it. I've watched movies where it was like a heist movie and there was like singing and dancing in it, like really strange. But if you put it in the context of the culture, I think it makes more sense. Just like I'm sure when we watch a European film, there are things in there for the audience is specifically there, right? So it's up and coming. I, I would say I'm not an expert on Bollywood. I mean, I'll always try something and watch something. I would say that Bollywood movies are probably getting better from like in the ones that I have watched over the years. I think there is becoming more structure, better cinematography, better direction. Not everything is not everything is just a traditional story. I think there is, but the thing though is like it's a market in itself. It's a business too. They need to make money, so who do they make their money from? Not from Adam and Joe in in Boston, right? It's from people in India, right? So they need
That's
to.
they'll be racist.
It's come back 136 180. So okay, going back to Shah Rukh Khan, he very much related. He understands this phenomenon, right? Of being a celebrity and being adhering to audiences. So in the time that he's become a celebrity, he actually has diversified from acting. He hosts TV shows. He owns a cricket team in the IPL, which Sid mentioned last week in the India Premier League. He keeps doing movies. This is an astonishing fact. Between 2019 and 2021, he has 10 movies scheduled to come out, which is insane, especially if you think that most of our Hollywood actors usually produce about, on average, one movie a year or one movie every 2 years at his age in the 50s. He has 10 coming out. So that's an average of 3 a year. That's crazy to think like that.
Yeah, that I don't know the details of what goes into making a movie, but it seems like yeah, if to be able to turn it around that quickly, he either has to have a lot of stamina and energy and work
Yeah.
rate, but or they're just very quick, you know, pump them
I
out
I think
productions?
totally. I think it's a combination of two, of the both. I think you'll see. I learned some about his habits, and they were really interesting. But on the other hand, like the way some of these movies are made, I mean, they're pretty quick in how they go. India is the largest producer of movies globally around the world. They surpass Hollywood and Nollywood and Europe and everything like that. I forget the number, but it's in the hundreds. That's the number of movies they get out each year. And I think in North America, I think in Hollywood, I remember a statistic. I think it's like less than 200 films a year. We're talking mainstream films, you know. Bollywood definitely is up there. And well, I mean, there's 1.6 billion people, so they need to be, they need content to produce and then to get out.
And another possibly stupid question: Bollywood.
Yeah.
What does it mean, Bolly?
I don't know. That's a great question. That's okay. I'll Google it. I'll Google it, and then we'll get back. I don't know. That's
don't worry. I'll do the googling.
Okay. You do the googling. That's a great question. Bali. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Okay, while you Google, I'll keep going.
It comes from Bombay and Hollywood, so they combined and made Bollywood. Because they mostly come out of Mumbai.
Mumbai, there you go. Mumbai is like the Los Angeles, the Hollywood of India. That's interesting. Okay. Here's an interesting thing: is that because so many of the movies he does are music based and dancing, they actually sometimes go. Over the years, you have like a set of music from your movies. He actually goes on tour sometimes with some of the other Bollywood celebrities around the world, and they do concerts. That's interesting, right?
Oh, another revenue stream.
Another revenue stream, and a way to connect with his fan base, which is interesting. Yeah, that too. So I was trying to think about what Hollywood stars do, and I guess other than make movies, they sort of just appear to promote the movies, and they don't really and then they do sponsorship and ads, but they don't really.
Oh man, no! George Clooney is making loads of money from his tequila
espresso.
Company. They're all getting into alcohol. I think Ryan Reynolds made a bunch of money. They're all making loads of money from their own
ventures.
Not like George Clooney branded tequila, but he put his name as an investment. But
so here's the thing: so you went to India. Do you remember seeing like lots of ads and billboards and stuff everywhere you went, like on the streets of selling every type of product?
Okay, to be fair, I was in Mumbai for probably less than 24 hours. And then for the rest of the time, I was in Goa for about almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And just to back up, it was for a friend's wedding and in a very nice part of Goa. Yeah. But they had a meeting of the BRICS leaders. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Yeah. And so they had cleared off all the usual stuff that you'd see and just put like Vladimir Putin's face. I don't know who was running Brazil at the time, Lula da Silva's face, whatever. So you didn't see what I understood like you'd normally see.
Yeah, they just covered it.
They took away normal street life.
Because endorsements are a big part of like Desi culture. And you're speaking about advertisement endorsements in Hollywood. It's the same thing in India. So Shah Rukh Khan has partnered with Pepsi, Nokia, Hyundai, Tag the watch company Lux. They say that 6% of television advertisement has him in it. That's crazy. Wow. 6% has him like just promoting stuff online, and so it's another revenue stream from him. So he understands it. And I was doing a little bit
of research. What's
a Desi is like a Desi is what we call people from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, like that.
Am I allowed to say that, or is that just?
Oh no, yeah. It's not like
you won't get upset.
No, it's not at all. I think you're gonna get a lot of thumbs up and stuff when they hear that.
I can say Tosh, my Desi friend.
Yeah, it's Desi. It would be S.
Desi.
Yeah, there you go. People would be like, people are gonna be like, wow, Dave knows something that other people don't know. So yeah. Okay, so here's where things get really, really interesting. This is the reason I chose them. So I was looking at a couple articles. And so Newsweek in 2008 declared Shah Rukh Khan the world's biggest movie star, the world. And then I found another link, and this writer at the Los Angeles Times says, quote, the biggest movie star you've never heard of, perhaps the world's biggest movie star, period. And so other international media outlets have also kind of gone to it. And like I said, that number, according to a popularity survey, 3.2 billion people around the world know who Shah Rukh Khan is. Sorry, I made a mistake earlier, follow him. But they know and they've heard of his name. and that's more than people who know Tom Cruise. And Shah Rukh Khan makes a joke and he says that Tom Cruise is sort of my competition. So like in the world, but he's just joking around with it. But so I started looking into this gentleman because he's so famous. And this is what I'd like you to do at the same time while we talk. If you go into your iPhone and you type in Shah Rukh Khan fans outside his house, he has like 10,000 people outside his house in Mumbai every single day just waiting to see him. And he goes out onto his roof and he waves at people and he says hello and hi and he tries to greet them and he tries to connect with people, which is insanity. And he lives right by the water in Mumbai, so there's a seafront. He's got a nice house and a nice view. People know where he lives, and he's got cops and stuff like that. But people wait outside his house just to get a glimpse of this gentleman.
How does he leave his house?
So probably
does he have a helipad?
I think he's not there yet, but I think he just like he's got escorts and bodyguards and cars and this and that. He's got a front.
Because the pictures I'm seeing, it's like just a mass of bodies, and I don't know how you get through that.
It's crazy. I'm going to get to it because I watched a movie which he did about his own fame, which is really interesting. So so here's some interesting things about Mr. Shah Rukh Khan. He even though he's an international celebrity now, he just prefers to work in local Indian films. He doesn't do Hollywood or any other films. Nothing international. He's just, when it comes to film here. But a lot of Indian films I've seen, they've actually gone abroad now to film. So not only do they film in India, but they also film around the world, London, Europe, Canada as well. So he will go to different places, but it'll be an Indian production. And interestingly enough, Hollywood has started going the opposite. Hollywood actually has started to go into India to film certain things. So there's like a reverse thing happening in terms of film production as well. In 2009, even though he was famous around the world, because his last name matched another name, he was detained at Newark Airport in New Jersey. And so like he said for 2 hours, he just said there. Apparently he was really nice about it and he didn't make a fuss or anything, but his name did it. Because I guess the border, the security people in the States didn't really know who he was. So they're like,
but I'm a famous actor. I'm the most famous actor in the world. Sure you are, buddy. Step aside.
So David Letterman has a show called My Next Guest Needs No Introduction. It's on Netflix. He since he retired from his late show, he does these interviews with key people. So one of his shows was with Shah Rukh Khan. He flew to he flew to Mumbai and he met with Shah Rukh Khan. And he went up to the roof with him and he saw the mayhem and the craziness. It's on Netflix. People should watch this. It's crazy. So he's up there with him and SRK knows what he's doing. He's saying hi to all the people and people from around the world. Like we're not talking just like local Indian. We're talking about internet, like diasporas. We're talking about white people who know Shah Rukh Khan. They like go in front of his house and they're just trying to get a glimpse of him. And so here's the crazy part. Shah Rukh Khan has this weird habit that he doesn't go to sleep. He doesn't sleep a lot. He sleeps 4 to 5 hours a night, but he sleeps after 5 o'clock in the morning. So he goes like 5 to 9, 5 to 10. So he makes an effort to go out to the streets with his bodyguard and say hello to as many people out there as possible up until 5 o'clock in the morning. It's crazy. He does this every night. So people might get a chance to actually, like touch him, quote unquote, if that's the thing they want to do, or take a selfie with him or whatnot. He like really tries to interact with his fans. So Dave.
I had to Google this while you were talking because the name was processing through my brain and it finally came out. When I was living in Budapest from 2014-17, he was filming a movie there. So there's a small chance that I passed him and didn't even blink an eye because no one in Hungary would really know who he was.
It could be.
And the Indian press had descended on Budapest to try and track him down.
I found a video of him in Vancouver. I guess he was there for a reason. And one Indian person came up. He was with his team. One person came up and he took a picture. And then he was just kind of him with his team walking down the street. You know what I mean?
Well, that must be so nice. I mean, I think I would prefer to be an Indian celebrity than a Hollywood celebrity, because then you can go to New York City, possibly Los Angeles, and roam the streets without paparazzi necessarily following you everywhere, which is like the bane of the existence of any A-lister, right?
Yeah, totally. I would 100% agree with you. I mean, I was going to ask you, this fame, this idea of fame, especially with celebrity, I know from when I was younger, I used to think that would be amazing and like be famous. And as I've gotten older, I think it would be a nightmare. Like I don't know what you think, like not to be able to go out just out of like your own freedom and just have people always coming up to you and talking to you and wanting things from you. Wouldn't you go mad?
Yeah, I'd go crazy. I mean, part of the joy of living in London is the possibility of being anonymous. You know, if you're not like a famous football, soccer player
Yeah,
or
totally.
actor. So someone like David Lewis could walk around and not run into like a
Yeah.
bunch of people. It's not like I'm unsocial or antisocial, but sometimes you just want to have your own space.
It's,
Um, and so a big city like London allows for that. But if you're a famous person, anywhere you go is off limits.
I agree. I think fame would be the most negative thing in my life. If I was famous, I would really detest it after a while, and to the point where I would be sad because of my anonymity and my freedom are some of the two things that I just love the most. Right, the idea I can just do anything I want. But imagine being so famous, such as him, and like really not being able to even step outside your house by yourself. You know what I mean? Or run to the market. I'm sure he doesn't run to the market. I'm sure he's got people who do that, but this idea of just not being able to is also just mayhem, right?
Yeah, you feel like a prisoner, a
Yeah.
very famous prisoner.
Yeah, I mean, so this is what I just, so in keeping with this topic, I did some research last night and I watched one of his films. Now, and it was one of the ones that he actually did really interestingly. It's about celebrity and fame. So he plays a dual role. He plays himself as a famous actor, pretty much himself, but different name. But also he plays himself as a lookalike fan, somebody who's kind of obsessed his life over this character. And I will actually say it's not a bad movie. There's no dancing in this one. So there's some music in the back, but not like it's totally okay. I'll link it. It's called Fan, rightly so. And the story goes, and I kind of feel like it could have been a little bit of a diary entry. I think he's trying to explain something about his life in it. So I was very, very specific in picking this because I wanted to kind of relate it to the topic. In the movie, he's a famous actor who's starting to age out, right? He's some of the last couple of films he's done has kind of bombed, but he's very globally known. And just like in real life, he has people standing in front of his house. And the young generation of actors are sort of coming up and coming, and they're trying to push him out because it's the time for the new one, right? A story as old as time, whatever category you're talking about. He has one fan who's kind of followed him his whole life, and he looks like him. So there's, every year they do a lookalike contest, and he always wins first place. He knows his movies, he knows his phrases, his dances, and blah blah blah. And so this fan for his birthday, for the actor's birthday, goes to Mumbai to try to meet him to show him the statue of him winning the contest. He hears that he sees that one of the other actors kind of badmouths him, and the fan takes offense at this because he's like, no, he's the best actor ever. So he actually like physically assaults the other actor on the actor's behalf, right? And then he posted on YouTube. And so then Shah Rukh Khan's character gets really kind of like upset and hurt. He's like, I would never do this. I would never hurt anybody. Like blah blah blah. And he ends up finding the fan. Like it's a long story, but he finds him and he goes to visit him, and he says like, why did you do this? And blah blah. He said, like, I did it for you. Blah blah blah. And so then the fan says, can you just give me 5 minutes of your time, right? And the guy says, why should I give you anything? It's my life, not yours. And so the fan says, but you say it's because of people like us, your fans, that you do this stuff, but you can't even give me 5 minutes. And so the guy so the actor really mistreats him as a fan and goes away. So at that point, this fan has a completely like the last 25 years of his life, pretty much his obsession has really just been for nothing. He's realized this guy's really just not that nice of a guy, and it's an act. So he spends a year kind of coming up with a revenge plan. And this is where it's really interesting is like he knows that like this actor is going to London to do this, and then he's going to Croatia to do this. So he actually goes, and because he looks like him, he kind of gets him into a number of trouble, like impersonating. He hits someone at Madame Tussauds. He acts inappropriately at a wedding on behalf, and everyone thinks it's him. So his bad reputation is there. And he tells him like, the only reason I'm doing this is because you mistreated me. Just say you're sorry and I'll stop, right? And he doesn't say sorry. And so it kind of gets to a point where like there's an ending, and there's this, and it makes you kind of think about celebrity and fame. So I was watching this movie and I was thinking like, I wonder if his life is sort of like this, in that he just he has an image to uphold, not only in India but around the world, right? And then I started thinking, do you think a lot of celebrities are like that? Like, do you think they really like they're famous because of people, but on the other hand, they want their anonymity, but then they can't have it? Or do they really play into it? Like, what do you think that cycle is like?
Oh, that's a very deep question. I don't know. It really depends. I guess with the fame and the actors, some of them really value their personal lives and their privacy,
Yeah.
and some actors and actresses are better at it than others. And
Yeah.
I'm quite certain there's others who cultivate the fame aspect of their acting career.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
I mean, have you seen famous people before, like ever around?
yeah, I have in London.
Who'd you see?
I
Tell
saw.
us. Give us the lowdown.
I passed by Ricky Gervais in Hampstead. I
Yeah.
was just there briefly, and I only knew it was him after he had passed me by, and
Yeah.
then my brain was like going through the registry of celebrities that I
No.
possibly could know from London, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that was him.
Yeah.
But I didn't say anything to him. And another one was Bill Nye. Do you know him?
The science guy?
No, not Bill Nye. Bill Nye.
Oh,
It's
the actor.
Nighy. I'm probably mispronouncing his last name, but
I know who he is.
he's like a tall, slender, quite posh British guy.
Long hair.
And he was actually in a British Indian-oriented movie, Best Exotic Marigold Hotel.
Yeah, I saw that.
And its sequels.
And it's
So
yeah.
yeah, those are my two run-ins.
So whenever I go to Los Angeles, I always see a celebrity. Like they're just
Whenever you go to Los Angeles. Excuse me.
to my Malibu house. No, I see them. Well, Vancouver's very famous, my home city, for films, and so when living there, you see people a lot. I saw Tom Green. I saw Michael Bublé, who's a resident of Vancouver. I've seen a couple of people in the airport. When I've been to Los Angeles only the 3-4 times, there have been times we ran, like we saw people. I would never ask for an autograph or a picture with anybody. I'm not really that type of person. I don't really care that much. But I wonder, I think some celebrities really play into the fame. They like it, and I think others try to escape it. But, people have commented on this idea, which really interests me, in that the only reason someone is famous is because of the fan or the people giving them the fame, right? So, like, if you took a George Clooney, who's famous because people know who he is, and you dropped him in, like, I don't know, what's in Bhutan, right? And he's in the streets of Bhutan, and nobody knows who he is. He's not famous anymore. You know what I mean? Like that idea. You've taken away that the reason why one would know you. You're just some white guy walking down the streets of Bhutan. So like, and then on the other hand, the argument is that like you actively decided to come into this field. You know what I mean? No one forced you into it, except for child actors, et cetera, et cetera. So like, if you actively were in the field, then like, shouldn't you also have a responsibility to do everything that comes with the fame?
But who's to say that? Why is it that someone who wants to be an actor should be forced into a life of paparazzi and fame? I mean, they're recognized for sure. That's the thing. Is it's a visual medium.
Yeah.
Just like I guess music is oral.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just comes to the territory. There's some actors and actresses who are very shy people, very introverted, and they only come to life, in their extroversion when they're given a script and they're in front of a camera.
Totally.
And there's I can't name them offhand, but I'm sure there's a bunch of them who are just mortified of doing like an impromptu event or having to do glad handing at premieres. I'm sure they hate it. Because it's a career and it's a thing that interests people, and I'm sure people get into it for different reasons, but a lot of people do it because just for the mere fact of they love the craft of acting, and they hate the fact that that's part of the game is whatever it is, all that fun stuff that comes with it. I'm sure it's okay for a while, you get
totally free stuff,
best spots, hotels, and endorsements. I think the coolest thing if I was famous, I mean, I'd rather be, if I was given wealth or fame, and obviously fame, I would choose wealth. But if I was famous, I would go and try and do one of those ads in Japan. So I think that's what I hear they do is they appear on commercials in Japan.
Yeah.
and they don't really know what's going on or what they're endorsing, but they just take
Yeah.
the money and smile.
Yeah, I think I would also choose wealth over fame because I wouldn't compromise my my physical, like my what is it, knowingness in the world. If that's the fact, like my visuality. I mean, you could be rich and just be some dude walking on the street, no one would bother you. But you could be poor, but everyone knows who you are, and they're always asking for autographs. I also feel like I would get fed up with people asking for autographs and pictures all the time. You know, like eventually I'd crack, and I wouldn't want that for them or for me. You know what I mean? Like I just want to be like, I just want to go for a walk. Like, you know,
Yeah, I think the one that would bother me more than fans would be the paparazzi. That's where
paparazzi.
I'd probably get busted for punching one or
Yeah, my
doing
favorite.
something.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
favorite is Alec Baldwin. He has a lot of run-ins with the paparazzi, and he just lets it rip. I think he's a little bit calmer now because he's got kids, but he like fights with them, yells at them, argues because they're just always bothering me. And I feel like I'm not for violence at all, but like when you have a family, or, and when you have people to protect and stuff like that, you really just want to give them, like, they didn't decide to do this. I mean, if you want to come after yourself, sure, that's a fight, but you want to leave the people out of the fight as well who are not involved. And so, like, I just feel like someone like Shah Rukh Khan, I like in India, because the mere number of people plus all the endorsements he does and everything he does, it's sort of like he could never walk down the street. You know what I mean? Like in India, like he's told me in Hungary, like people don't know who, like, but this, or in Vancouver, but this guy couldn't. And I wonder if that plays a role, like that's sort of like if it's limited, because you should watch this documentary. So David Letterman, he comes to India, talks to him. And so Shah Rukh Khan has a family. He's got 3 kids. 2 of them are grown up, and they both live in America, doing they're in their studies. And so he asked them about like, what do your kids and feel, and what do they do? And they were talking about how like they don't like kind of their life in India. I mean, like, yeah, it's nice to live in a nice place and have people like help out and like doing this, and but like they don't like the attention, and they don't like being known as the kids of so and so, right? And so I think they have a real freedom in America because people are sort of like, they don't know who their dad is exactly, right? And I think that's a real real kind of unintentional byproduct of fame that it can kind of go through. And so both his kids are actually studying, or are studying different aspects of film. And so he had asked Letterman asks Shah Rukh Khan, like, do you think your son would ever be an actor? And he said, no, I don't think so. Because he's more interested in the writing side behind the camera as opposed to in front. But it's sort of like a non-win situation for him, because if he turns out to be a good actor, people will say, well, of course, it's in the genes, right? Like it's from dad. And if he turns out to be a bad actor, he'll always be compared to dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think this again is a story that's global in nature. Our comparisons to our parents. And I just started thinking about it last night, and I was like, that really sucks for the guy, because he can really never be on his own 2 feet unless he kind of moves to a place or just kind of discontinues his relationship with his dad on a public level. You know what I mean? If he really wants to stand on his own 2 feet and make it. So it's sort of like one thing turned out to be really positive for one person, but that same thing turned out to be very negative for another person.
Yeah, that would be a real challenge, is bringing up kids in that kind of environment and making sure they're not messed up
Yeah.
by the fame and the money and everything. Because if that's all they know, it's probably better that they've gone off to the US, and that was probably a deliberate thing where they were encouraged or
Well,
motivated themselves to get out of there.
I think one of the horrible things about Hollywood is that everyone tries about the West, I guess now, or especially Hollywood kind of emphasizes this, is that like now you see a lot of famous people's kids and relatives also try to be famous because of that initial product, right? Like, for example, like, the Kardashians, like, they're really like, oh, like photos and selfies and blah, blah, blah. But it all really started with Robert Kardashian, who was their father. And he wasn't a celebrity in this sense. He was actually a lawyer / real estate guy. You know what I mean? Who was on the O.J. Simpson team in '94, right? And so he was actually well known in Los Angeles. And then, he unfortunately passed away. And then, his kids kind of took that name and kind of went for it. And you have that with a number of other people as well. And I think some people really want to take it where other parents and other famous people really try to protect their kids from it. They really don't want them in this industry. So I'm always interested, whenever they interview celebrities, they always talk about, oh, do you think your kids will also have the same interest as you do? And some celebrities say like, yeah, I think they'll intend. Others will be like, no, I don't want that at all. And I think that it's really protective of their kids, which a parent should do, right? I mean, at the end, you want your kids to make the right decisions, but if you're putting them in an environment which is very kind of conducive to a certain lifestyle, certain way, then like your thinking will all like will only be that, right? You could have horrible kids. Like Shah Rukh Khan could have had kids who are like, I'm really gonna milk this, you know what I mean? Like I'm really gonna go off dad's name for as long as possible and do nothing with my life, right? Or you have kids who are like, listen, I just want to get out. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think? Like, what makes people think like that? Like, what makes people either kind of give in or just be like, no, I don't want this. In
For the
your opinion.
children, you mean like the children of famous
Yeah,
people?
sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's another very deep question. I think it depends entirely on the child, what they've seen, what they've experienced, and how their parenting was possibly. I mean, you could have a very nice, stable, balanced Hollywood mother and father, and who are given a very grounded upbringing, or you could have a very unstable, volatile Hollywood mother and father who,
Yeah.
There's that whole scene of they go off the rails parents
Yeah.
because they're on drugs or they have affairs and what have you, and that kind of messes up the kid on top of the whole
Totally.
fame thing. So yeah, I think that it's always a challenge, even if they're not famous. If you're a son or a daughter of a wealthy parent,
Yeah.
there's a certain thing you have to do to try and make sure that the kids, it doesn't go to their head.
It's yeah.
But I think one when you brought it to my mind when you mentioned like dynasty and the next generation, but I thought there's actually one Hollywood family I could think of, the Sheen family,
The
the
Sheens.
Estevez Sheens.
Yeah.
They changed their name. Only Emilio kept the family name.
Sure.
But I think that's a pretty good example where, aside from one or two,
They're pretty
Charlie has had his problems
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah.
Maybe not lately, but for the last decade or so.
Sure.
But had
grounded.
successful careers, right?
Yeah.
There's Martin Sheen. He's the
Patriarch.
Is he the patriarch?
Yeah. President Bartlett.
Charlie,
from the West Wing.
Emilio. Anybody else? Am I missing someone?
I think it was them, and then I think there was like a group of young actors, kind of like who were friends with Charlie. Like Rob Lowe was part of that group, and James Spader, and all
It was
these
like an '80s Rat Pack.
kind of thing. So no, that's
Rat
true.
Pack.
Yeah, Brat Pack, sorry. So that's true. It's not to say all kids of celebrities are horrible and stuff. I mean, there are kids that are fine and they follow in, and but it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. So I'll finish with this. This was the impetus for the thing. Shah Rukh Khan himself says that, I know I'm not, like, this is not a quote, but he says that he knows he's not talented or skillful in the art, but he wants to get into the hearts of people. He wants people to love him. And it's not like an ego thing. He knows that he can't really produce a fantastic, he's not the best actor in the world, but he wants to make this connection with people. And so what's happened now is, because over the last 30 years, he's been in so many films, and you see him on billboards, and you see him promoting this and on the streets and with the charity work, he's actually transcended movie star status to India to something else. He's connected with people in a way that, like, even you, Dave, you've seen his photo, right? Which is unique, because you didn't grow up in India or in a Bollywood movie watching environment, and neither did I. But his name was common. Like, I knew who he was, right? So he knows, for example, he says that whether my movies are good or bad, I'm still trying to be nice to people and connect with people, right? And so this is really fascinating. I highly encourage all our listeners and viewers to watch this interview with David Letterman, just from just a basic interview point of view and just character point of view. When he goes up to the top of his house and he's like, hello, hi, the pictures that you saw, and he's trying to wave at people, and he's blowing kisses at people, and he does actions. He told Letterman, that's not really me. I'm a really shy person generally, but this is his quote, I'm an employee of the myth of Shah Rukh Khan, he says. So I'm not that guy that you see. I'm the image, that image that you see. I work for that image, like I'm an employee of that image. And so I started thinking, I'm like, is he bullshitting, or is he?
Yeah, my BS alarm went off there. I think that's very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have to imagine that on the one hand, I know actors always say that I'm shy and I'm so grateful and I'm not really this person, but like, clearly you're enjoying the fruits of that labor, of that labor. And on the other hand, sure, you might not be, But I wonder in this context if because of his role in Indian culture, how they see him and the number of people, he has to give in to that a little bit, you know what? And probably has to act a little bit. Or is it completely just a falsehood? Like, what do you, not specifically him, but that idea that like once you transcend a certain status, you just always have to feed into it just to play it. You know what I mean? Like Tom Cruise, for example, like let's use him as an example. I wonder if he really does enjoy doing all these stunts and all this other stuff, or if he's really just a safe person, but since he started it, kind of has to give into it. Or if Brad Pitt has to be so and so, or if Clooney has to drink his Nespressos all the time. Like once you start down this road of fame, like can you stop ever, or do you always need to play into it? Because if you stop, then the money dries up, then the fame goes away, then you have nothing, or maybe you're too scared. It's just a general philosophical question, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they say fame and money goes to your head. So there's some people who definitely they play it up, and I think Mr. King Khan, by what you've told me and by looking up his image, I really struggled with his representation of himself as a shy person. He
Totally.
definitely seems to lap it up. But then I think there's actors and actresses who genuinely love their craft and aren't bothered with all the rest of it. And, what's an example? Maybe Christian Bale.
Sure.
I don't think he goes out of his way for fame and endorsements. And he's just a very good actor and versatile and works hard. So yeah, I think Joaquin Phoenix, he has his own thing. He's a bit quirky, and he kind of had a difficult or stranger upbringing, as far as I understand it.
His brother killed himself, right?
Yeah.
River.
I believe like they grew up in Hollywood, so there was that aspect. But he's a genuinely good actor, and I think he's a bit shy and doesn't really get into that whole thing. But because he's so good, I think he's one who's like very reluctant to be thrown into the spotlight all the time. And he kind of hates the fame aspect to it. But I think it's like all walks of life. It's just everyone handles things differently, and some people like collapse under the pressure. Very much, these child actors. They're the ones I think that, for me, they really struggle with the fame. They're too young for it, and it's really hard, obviously, to carry that your fame. When you're no longer as cute as you were as a 6 to 7-year-old.
I think I'm going to play devil's advocate for a little bit, just in terms of it. I think while that is true, I think one of the I have these things. So I don't know if you've experienced it, but as I grow older, I learn life lessons more clearly in my life, and I try to be like, I wish I knew this 15 years ago or something like that. And it's only with experience, right? It's about being human. I think one of the life lessons I've learned is knowing yourself, who you really are as a person. It can really help guide the rest of your life, right? If it takes you 35 years to know who you are, then perhaps the remaining time. Because when you're young, you're really, really just gullible. Like you really don't know anything, but you think you know everything, So maybe Mr. Khan and maybe all these people, they know the game they're playing too. You know what I mean? They know, for example, that he's honest and he says that, maybe I'm not the best actor, but I know that I can connect with people and I can do this and that. And there's benefit. There's like a product of it that I can also benefit from it. So maybe it's not a horrible thing, if he's not lying to people or whatnot. Maybe it's a system of it. Or maybe he really just does, like, this is his life and this is what he does. Or maybe he's just doing it for the money. I'm just playing different devil's advocates. The thing is that I think everyone, like at the end of the day, whether it's Bollywood, Hollywood, or blah, 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 it's an industry and it's a business. Yes, they need to produce stuff to make money on a macro scale, on a micro scale. Everyone needs to make money. And these people know their worth, right? If you're a good actor and you're bringing in money, production companies want you, films want you, and you have to keep working as well. And he knows that he needs this revenue stream and this revenue stream. So like maybe his face is out there. But at the same time, maybe it is one of those things where he just wants to really make people happy and that at the same time make money. And this is his best way of which he can do it. So tying it back to kind of knowing yourself, maybe he just knows what he wants and his direction in his life, And is that a horrible thing? Is it for me to say? I don't know.
Yeah, I think possibly he just sees himself as, the product, and got to keep selling the product, keep the Bollywood brand strong. Because from what you said, it was floundering in the 90s, and he was behind the resurgence. So I think he probably sees it himself as someone who needs to, while it's has renewed strength, to keep it going and to keep producing and carry it forward. So. Yeah,
it's
more power to him if he does that. But I don't think he should be saying something like,
I'm a shy
well,
person, or
I'm a
like
shy
yeah,
guy. Maybe he is, but there's probably different ways of answering that
totally.
question.
So it's. I'll just end it with 2 points. It's strange to think that half the world's population knows his name. Which is crazy in terms of just surveys and numbers. And that's people from around the world just to know his name. And like you didn't know his name, but you knew his face, right? So even I'm sure that would be included. That's just an astonishing fact, just that type of popularity. But I think, by the way, only a handful of people are kind of at that level, right? Like I'm sure Trump is probably a name that everyone knows at this point, and like maybe a couple other actors. But just I would encourage you and our listeners, like, watch one of his movies and see if what we've talked about in this podcast kind of resonates. He's extremely charming. I'll give it to you. Like even when I watch him in interviews or any of his films and stuff like that, he definitely knows how to milk that that well. Like he knows extremely charming. And I've noticed, by the way, people who are really charming in life, they know that they're charming. When they have that gift, and some people can really, really like milk it. And I think, for example, Tom Cruise is another gentleman who's extremely charming as well. I think in recent years he's had some issues like publicly with personal life, but generally as a movie star, he knows how to milk that role. And because like if you, I don't know if you watch a lot of old movies, but there was a time in Hollywood where people like Cary Grant, people like Jimmy Stewart, James Dean, like they fit a movie star role, both in and outside of film, and so like they represented kind of an image and a time and a business that not so much others do now. And like once you know that you fit in a role and you're in demand, then you really can just play it to your advantage, if that makes sense. And so I think nowadays the problem with fame is that not everyone, a lot of people are famous, but not everyone really knows how to use it or do it properly or kind of really even grow from it. Everyone just kind of does their thing. But a lot of people, there are some people who really just, they are movie star status. And Shah Rukh Khan is not only an Indian movie star, but he's a global movie star. He knows how to brand himself.
For sure. And I need to seriously start watching some of his movies. If he's the most famous actor in the world, I feel a great shame for not having seen a single one.
No problem. Maybe we can ask our listeners to suggest movies that we can. I watch them too, and I watch them with an open mind and just kind of getting to know more about cinema and yeah. So I thought we'd stay in India, but maybe we'll take a step back next time. But hopefully we didn't offend Shah Rukh Khan fans, or maybe if we did, tell us why. We try to be neutral, but I was just astonished at the popularity of one.
I'm innocent. I knew nothing.
Of one person. Dave was to blame. He was the impetus behind this episode. He called.
Well, it was very interesting for me because my knowledge of Bollywood going into this episode was negative.
Negative.
So
yeah, I mean, I'm all for quality. It's a little bit of a lie when I say that because I watch some Hollywood garbage, but it's fun to watch. But I should be more open-minded. I think I will try to move towards quality. So if you ever come across good movies from any part of the world, let me know, and I'll try to do the same for you. It's just like books. I want to be as open-minded and broad in terms of my interests as possible.
Totally.
Well, that's this episode. I hope people enjoyed. Like our page, subscribe to our page, visit our page, tell people about your page, and let us know what you thought. Whether you agree or disagree, we are open to comments and feedback.
Absolutely. That was Super Respectable, episode 10.
Signing off.